Hello, everyone. Welcome to week 3 of cancer season. I can't believe it, right? God, yeah, it's already that's crazy. It's flying by. How are you doing? I hope you're so well. This week we're talking about the shell. After diving into the shell last week and working on really developing a nurturing and loving and intimate relationship with your deepest, most private self, we're now looking at how you protect that self. What mechanisms exist for you that protect those deepest, most private, most vulnerable, most needy and childlike pieces of yourself, the pieces of yourself that you're ashamed of, that you don't want the world to see, that you struggle to really accept. I'm really hoping that after the work of last week, you're this is a never ending process, this learning to being in a relationship with those parts of you and learning to shed shame related to those parts of you is a lifelong process, right? It doesn't end after week 2 of cancer season of Expansive Astrology Academy. Absolutely not. And hopefully that work that we've been that we talked about last week is helping to lay the groundwork into what we're working on this week. We're really going to be looking at how you protect those pieces of you, how those pieces of you ask to be protected. An example from last week that I gave was something like, maybe if a person has fear of abandonment, that might lead to some pretty desperate attempts at feeling accepted by a partner or by a parent or whoever, right? If you're afraid somebody's going to leave you, if you're deeply afraid that somebody's going to leave you and you're going to lose a person, you're more likely to really seek out validation and evidence and proof that the person accepts you and is not going to leave. So that need for acceptance comes from a very vulnerable and human, natural place, right? We all want to be accepted, especially by people that we love and that we want to keep around. But that need may come out in some very vulnerable or in some very disempowered, uncute, unhelpful ways, like lashing out or picking fights. Because if you pick a fight, once that fight is resolved, you feel a sense of ease and you feel accepted again. And it's proof that you can disagree and have a fight and not be left. So beware of any pieces of you that might be picking fights. This is just one example. There's many ways that our human, vulnerable, childlike selves come out and ask for validation or get really disempowered. There's many ways besides picking fights or fear of abandonment, right? And that's for you to explore, is how does this come out for you? Was there something else I was going to say? Moving on. I feel like I was in the middle of a sentence. Shucks. Forgive me. So this week, we're really taking a look at how you protect yourself. We're exploring your defenses. So I want to highlight the difference between defensiveness and defending yourself. There's a big difference between being defensive and living with defensiveness. There's a big difference between defensiveness and defending yourself. When you're defensive, when a person is defensive, they are expecting a fight. From dictionary.com, the definition of defensive is excessively concerned with guarding against the real or imagined threat of criticism, injury to one's ego, or exposure of one's shortcomings. We become defensive when we want to guard ourselves against real or imagined threat of criticism, injury to one's ego, or exposure of one's shortcomings. Defending yourself, on the other hand, is responding. According to dictionary.com, the definition of defending is to support in the face of criticism, to prove the validity of by answering arguments and questions put by a committee of specialists. Oh, wow. Wow. Regardless of if you are facing a committee of specialists, right? We would defend ourselves to support in the face of criticism, to prove the validity of by answering arguments and questions put forth by another person. In defending yourself, your ego's in check. When we're getting defensive, part of the definition of defensiveness is that this may be a real or imagined threat. Part of the definition of defensiveness is being excessively concerned with guarding against real or imagined threat. Defending, on the other hand, is supporting yourself or supporting whatever needs to be defended, whatever needs defending, right? To support in the face of criticism, to prove validity by answering arguments. So how many times can I repeat those two definitions for you? You get it. Okay, moving on. Explore this in your life. When do you feel defensive? And how do you best defend yourself? I really think that defensiveness is disempowered and defending yourself is empowered, right? What triggers defensiveness for you? And when you find yourself feeling really defensive, you can kind of like take a pause and zoom in and get really mindful and be with yourself and explore, is this threat real? Is it possible for me to support my position and be effective in the way that I'm arguing my position? Is it possible for me to walk away from this situation with my ego intact no matter what I say? Is my response a very egoic one? Those are all things that you can explore anytime you find yourself being defensive, because much of our defensiveness comes from insecurity. It comes from sensing imagined threats and acting preemptively. And here's the thing, is when you react rather than respond, you're more likely to get reactions from other people. If you have your pinchers out, your crab pinchers out when you're entering a conversation or when somebody brings something up to you, they are more likely to pull out their pinchers too. I also like the sword and the shield analogy. If you're entering a conversation with your hand on your sword, or your sword yielding your sword, that's what they say, right? Another person's going to want to pull out their sword too because they need to defend themselves against your sword, right? Yes, and that's an example of how you might not have a whole lot of control over what is happening. You might not have a whole lot of control over the fact that you might be facing criticism or threat to your ego. And you do have a whole lot of power. If you don't pull out your pincher claws, and if you don't pull out your sword, that's a sense of power that you can have over the conversation. That's a sense of power that you can have over the interaction, because by you putting away your pinchers and pulling out your peace signs, oh man, put away your pinchers and pull out your peace signs, baby. Wow. the people or person that you're interacting with are more likely to at least like put their pinchers in their pocket. The crab analogy is a really good one for me this season. Man. Okay. Now, on the other hand, our shell and our pinchers, maybe you don't really use them for confrontation and defending yourself. Our shell and our pinchers also act as like a protective shield when we avoid confrontation or when we avoid defending ourselves, when we retract into the shell, when we hide. When do you hide? Where do you hide? What do you hide from? When do you become withdrawn and non-confrontational? I know plenty of people who are afraid of confrontation. I also know plenty of people who are like over confrontational, right? This is something we've been working on since Aries season and exploring like our inner emperor and how we approach difficult situations, right? Do you avoid confrontation? Do you experience like a hesitation to ask for what you need and be open and vulnerable? Do you compromise too often or give up your position on things, give up defending yourself, give up on issues? Are you a people pleaser? Do you fall back on passive aggressiveness rather than assertiveness and asking for what you need? Those are all defenses as well. And those are all ways that our shell acts to protect us. And those are all examples of disempowered energy. An empowered crab knows when to use its pinchers, knows when to hide. One of the characteristics of Cancer as an energy is its bravery. So you get to really tap into and create more of a relationship with being brave outside of your shell, being brave in and facing confrontation. Remember, did I already say this? Remember that part of respecting yourself and loving yourself requires confrontation. Part of parenting yourself and evolving and growing requires that sometimes you confront a problem or confront a person. Being non-confrontational isn't an option anymore. I'm telling you right here, right now. This doesn't mean that you overcorrect from being non-confrontational and over-compromising and lax with boundaries and a people pleaser. You're not going to overcorrect to being a narcissistic asshole, right? I know you won't. You know that you won't. And that's often the fear for people who are non-confrontational. They're afraid to seem aggressive. Remember, there's a difference between being aggressive and being assertive, and you have a right to assert what you need. We get to really, this is an area where we really get to take what we've learned about communication and expressing ourselves in Gemini and in Aries, really. Remember to use your emotional experience. Remember to use your emotions and your intuition as a roadmap for how you communicate. This is why the work of last week is so important. Knowing and loving the inner crab is so, so, so important so that we can accurately use our emotions as a roadmap, as guideposts. So what does that look like? You get to learn things. You get to experience your emotions in a new way. Use your emotions as data, if nothing else. You get to learn things like when I'm feeling blank, it means I need blank. For example, when you're feeling angry, maybe it means that your boundaries have been crossed. And you need to stand up for yourself. That's usually what anger means. And anger is when people like repress and neglect many emotions, but anger is one that a lot of people really neglect to tend to. Anger's got a pretty bad rap, and really all anger is usually what anger is here to show you is that a boundary is being crossed and that you need to stand up for yourself. That's why some heat and some fire gets building when we're angry or frustrated, because something within us wants to use that fire to defend ourselves. So being angry doesn't have to be something that you neglect, or it doesn't mean that you're an asshole. It's not something that you need to turn off or be ashamed of. It's something that you need to listen to and look at this experience of anger as data, so that you can tend to that and do what needs to be done. It's telling you something. It's a very beautiful phenomenon when we get angry. Another example is maybe if you're feeling hopeless, maybe it means that you're needing to reconnect with your support system, with people you love, with people who see your worth. And oftentimes when we're feeling hopeless, our sense of worth is like squashed, right? Oftentimes if we're feeling hopeless is fucking heavy, man, right? And oftentimes if you're feeling hopeless, the last thing we want to do is acknowledge or listen to our worth and how valuable we actually are and how much hope there actually is. We tend to kind of cut ourselves off from that. And hopelessness, when that's really coming up for you, it's data, right? And it doesn't have to mean that you need to connect with your support system, but what does it mean for you? It means something. It means you need something. It's important to know that and be with that. When you're feeling frustrated, maybe it means you need to take a break from your responsibilities. Maybe you need to reach out and ask for help. Maybe you just need to, even like just a quick little breather of a break, 1, 2, 3 deep breaths in that moment. What does frustration, how can that serve as data for you? Like, what is that telling you that you need? What is it communicating to you? When you're feeling taken advantage of, maybe it means you need to ask for help, or maybe it means that that you're giving away too many eggs from your egg basket. Maybe it means that you need to conserve some more of your energy if you're feeling taken advantage of. If you're feeling taken advantage of, it's data that something needs to change. Feelings are data. They're messengers, and they can help us to express ourselves more effectively, more assertively. No, I guess it'd just be more assertive, right? Also, kind of pulling from the lessons and the medicine from Gemini, consider the way that we approach or set up, consider the way that you approach or set up these types of conversations. When your shell is on and your pinchers are out, others are more likely to try to pinch you back. It's the law of crabs. What can I say? If you approach a conversation with a willingness to get naked and take off your shell, with a willingness to expose the deeper, more vulnerable, softer, more mushy and gushy, when you're willing to expose those parts of you, the conversation is more likely to like meet you there. Not always. Some people are abusive. Some people, what eats crabs? Seagulls. Some people are seagulls. And if you get vulnerable around them and you say like, hey, I'm having this need that is coming from a really dark or deep down dark place, and it's making me crabby and it's causing a problem, like, can we talk about it? Some people are gonna like kind of pick you apart. And I speak about this often, but that's data too, right? Those people, if you're a crab and you have many seagulls in your life, um, trying to figure out a way, like maybe you need to go, I don't know, find more crabs. Find more crabs who understand what it's like to be a meaty, soft crab. So this week we're really exploring all of our defenses. And I've kind of laid out some examples from a very passive, non-confrontational end of the spectrum, and from the more like aggressive, defensive, fighting end of the spectrum. Um, I think we all can be anywhere on that spectrum, depending on the situation and what's coming up for us and how the other person or persons are responding to us, right? We can be all over the spectrum, and your job is to explore that, all of the nuances of that, and take radical responsibility for that, and learn how to bring yourself into the very assertive middle of that spectrum, where you know that you have these pinchers that are powerful and that can defend you. You can be crabby and you can be passive aggressive. You can be just plain aggressive. You can protect yourself and know that, like, you've got a hard shell. Man, I love this crab analogy. Geez, can you tell? Um, you've got an effective shell, right? Like um, you can handle the vulnerability. What am I trying to say? You're resilient. Our shells are amazing. You are resilient. Don't be afraid to really like honor these sides of you and nurture these sides of you, and learn how to use your shell and use your defenses in the most effective, assertive, aligned, and empowered ways possible. Yeah? All right. I think that's all I have. I think that's all I have for this week. Check out the PDF. I'm going to go deeper into exploring these defenses. And some suggested tarot pulls will be included as well. And aside from that, I'll see you next time. I'll see you next week when we're diving into the tarot. We'll talk about the Chariot, the High Priestess, and the Wheel of Fortune. I'm excited. Take care of yourself, little crab. Precious little pretty little shiny hermit crab. I'll see you later. Bye.